So they had a challenge. They had to code the duck. What program would you give the duck? What steps do you need to take to have the duck go around this pond, always facing forward, and get back to the start facing the same direction? So as a team, they wrote out codes step by step of what they thought the duck should do.
Okay.
So from this, we would actually try this code on the duck to see if it would work. And from that, we go on to a conversation about things that all coding languages have in common. Things like repetition, which is called iteration.
Okay.
So we say that instead of 8 lines of code, how could you use a repeat command to make it maybe 3 lines of code? And that's where this comes from. So instead of 8 lines of code, you could actually do repeat a certain number of times this, move forward a certain number of steps, turn right a certain number of degrees. So now you've changed 8 lines of code into 3 lines of code. Why is that important? Why do we care? It's important for programming to be as concise as possible, and then we sort of brainstorm why. Why? Well, there's less chance of messing up. The less lines you type, less chance of typing something incorrectly. It's easier to read, which also means it's easier to debug, less code to go through. And this comes up again. Programmers are lazy. They, why do more work than you have to? Right? And another advantage of that, it's faster. If you can write 3 lines instead of 8, you can do more. You can, code more games. And then they don't usually get this because it's not as big a deal as it used to be back in the day. But memory. 3 lines of code takes up less memory than 8 lines of code. It's much more efficient. So there's that reason too. And then we also talk about so things that all programming languages have in common. Part of it is the process. You come up with your idea, you write it out first pseudocode style, just in English. Then you figure out how to translate this into whatever language you're working with. You see if there should be something in here saying write the code, but then you compile it, which means you're taking what you've written in the programming language, and then the application is turning it into language that the computer understands. If you might come up with some errors, in which case you have to go back and debug. That's a whole process. Beta testing, getting other people to test your game, because you know what your game does. You need to find out what other people know. Like, you're supposed to turn left, or you're supposed to open that chest, but maybe they don't, because you didn't give them enough quiz about that. So there's a whole process for beta testing. And then some vocabulary that all programming languages use for the most part. There's iteration. There's always some way to repeat. There's variables, which we were just talking about, and they don't have to be numbers. You can have text as a variable. And there's conditionals, if this, do that. So that way, when they're learning a new language, they'll be looking for these things, and they'll recognize them when they see them.
Okay.
As far as beta testing goes, we do a whole class on beta testing, which is it's over here. It's over. When they're beta testing, they're testing 2 things. They're testing the game itself, and then the mechanics of the game. Just how do you move around inside the game. So there's 2 roles: the beta tester. First, they play to win the game, and then they play to break the game. They try everything, seeing if they can make an error happen. And all the while they're talking it out, they're saying everything they're thinking. Oh, I'm going to try opening this. What happens if I do that? I think I'll go west. Oh, now I don't know where to go. What do I do with this object? I don't know what it is.
Okay.
The author of the game silently, very important, silently observing and listening to the beta tester.
Okay.
Take notes as you go along. Directed towards how you can improve your game.
Okay.
It's very important that the author is silent here. And then it's part of this is just a short clip from the whole design process. But you build, you beta test, you keep going around, and then so you're finally ready to publish.
Okay.
So that's what you do.
This was SAR.
I'm Mary Keong. I'm teaching summer school at Punahou, coding and game design. I usually teach at St. Andrews Priory for girls, 6th grade math and science, and next year I'll be teaching a programming course in the high school.
Are you Doug's wife?
Yes, I am.
He's my guy.